that discussion.
And Taryn Jackson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here. So happy that I was invited by the St. Lucie school team. I am the Director of Special Populations for Charter Schools USA. I'm literally months into being in Florida. I moved down here from Rochester, New York in January. So in New York, I'm a former Director of Special Education, principal of in an urban district, and also in a special education agency school. But I come to the work excited to partner with people here. And as I said earlier, there are no coincidences. So everyone is here at this time for the right time to be able to move the work forward. So I'm excited to participate and to contribute whatever I can, and to hear what everyone else has to add to this and to move forward. Thank you so much for including me.
And then Lee Jackson.
Hi everyone, my name is Lee Jackson, and I first met Mr. Wade. We were co-workers at an overnight summer camp a few years ago now, but currently I live in Arlington, Virginia, outside of DC, where I am the program director at an educational nonprofit. And I specialize in helping young people get involved in the public policy process, whether that's helping a local candidate run for office, or work with the media, or even work with their members of Congress and such. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm originally from Maine, so just wanted to give my perspective about some different things I've seen around the country and some best ways to get involved. Thank you.
So my name is Irvin Rogers, and the reason why I joined this conversation is because I love giving back to my community. I went to Renaissance Charter School as a kid, so I guess finding a way to give back to the students there and finding a way to get active in my community is the best step possible.
And then Mr. Howell.
Yes, I'm excited to join this conversation for a number of reasons, because 40 years ago, I graduated from high school in Dade County, Florida. And a lot of unrest that was taking place on my prom night actually is what we've seen this past month. And so it's sort of like surreal for me. And I think that our good Lord and Savior has prepared me to be in place to add calm to the situation and add some of my experiences that I've had throughout my journey. And so when Mr. Wade reached out to me, then I was compelled, not only because I'm a Black man, but also because I care for the human race in general. I've served with people and been in foxholes in the Marine Corps with a person that's from every ethnicity that's represented on this Zoom right now. So that's why I'm excited to join you all in this peaceful, productive conversation.
And then Miss Sonia Pickens.
Yes, I do want to thank you for accepting my invite to participate in this conversation, because I just wanted to be an active participant because of my kids that are mine, and just for kids and parents everywhere, because I feel like sometimes we don't take an active voice in conversations that affect our kids in many aspects. So I wanted to make sure I am actively doing what I speak to my kids about, and that they are seeing me participate in everything, in every aspect, to make sure everything is set in stone for them to be their best.
And then Pastor Darren.
Hi, I'm Pastor Taryn Gale, lead pastor of the Family Life Worship Center. And the primary reason why I wanted to participate in this conversation is because I'm of the belief if you're not a part of the solution, then ultimately you're a part of the problem. And we have to have conversation in order to bring about change locally, nationally, as well as globally. And I am a proud resident of Volusia County and want to see what we all can do because together we're better.
And then Mrs. Jackson, do you want to? I couldn't find her in the room. She moved.
I know, there's two sheets. Good morning, everybody. I am Taryn Jackson. I am one of the assistant principals at Renaissance Charter School of St. Lucie. And I felt, first of all, I just think that, you know, with everything going on, I think it's important as a leadership team for us to really focus on what we can do moving forward for our students. And that I think, you know, having this conversation is a great start, and getting our community members involved is a great start. So I'm excited to be here and to kind of get some insight on and some thoughts on what we can do moving forward to make sure that our kids come back to school mentally prepared and being able to provide them the support that they need with everything that they've been exposed to in these past few months. So excited to be here. And I want to thank everyone else who's in this chat. I like to see faces, so I'm gonna go to my second page. Thank everyone who's here and participating, because it's important. It's important for us and it's important for our kids.
And then Ms. Coburn.
I just wanted to, my microphone sometimes doesn't work, so I'm up close here. I just wanted to thank our, you hear me? Nope. Okay. I just wanted to thank them for giving us this.
So her microphone is not great. I don't really understand. She's got the same laptop as everybody else in the room, but for whatever reason, she can't be heard. With that said, she just wanted to thank Pastor Darren for hosting us here today, and to thank everybody for joining us for this conversation. That's you know, really something that we're really grateful for. All right, I think that is everybody. I'm really excited that we have such a large panel to share with us today. So the first question is just about what does it mean to be fair? Because I think when we're talking about social justice, it starts with you know, that concept of being treated in a way that's fair. So is there any panelists that would like to take themselves off mute and just answer that question?
Let me just start the conversation by saying that that question and the answer that you might get will vary depending on the person that you're asking. Because for some people, as you see the diversity that we have on the panel, as well as the participants, you have male, female, blacks, whites, Latins, so forth and so on. So it really depends on who you ask, because there are some demographics that feel that things are already equitably spread around. However, you can ask someone that is probably broad.
All right, and then Ms. Christie, do you want to share as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really that question makes me think of the issue is really what's equitable.
Mr. Wade, I can jump in here for a minute, if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
We're hearing from
Okay.
Ms. Christie.
You know,
But Ms. Christie was sharing. Could you hear her?
I can't hear her. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Ms. Christie, we continue, please.
Okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I think that the issue is really about equity, and that, you know, in order for things to be quote unquote fair, you've got to look at really where everybody is coming from. And so, you know, it's not necessarily give everybody the same thing, but what is needed for everybody to have the same experience. And so I think that the important word to focus on when we think about what's fair is equity, and also, you know, understanding trauma-informed practice and, you know, really where people are coming from fundamentally based on their lived experience.
All right, great. Ms. Kerrigan, do you want to share now? I'm sorry. No? Could everybody hear what she was like saying? Because the people here could not hear.
I could hear Katie.
That's,
I heard
yeah,
Katie.
that's what I thought too. It's so weird that I can hear and then the people, I don't know, this is an interesting technological experience way past my technology ability. So I'm sorry if as a host, I'm taken away from everybody's experience. But Dr. Gladwich, do you want to share?
No, I agree with Katie that when we talk about fairness, it really does get back to equity. And you know, everybody is in a different place, and honestly, I don't see a lot of equity in practices across our community, and I think it really takes some digging deep and really kind of trying to understand people's experiences and where they're coming from, because it really is individual, and it really is about really looking at where people are coming from, because different groups are going to feel differently based on their own experiences, you know, as we've come to this place.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So everybody's perspective is based on the experiences that they've had. So everybody's perspective is different because the experiences that everybody has an opportunity to have is totally different.
But that's why we have to talk, right? Conversation is really important. There are a lot of white people that are afraid of what to say. They don't want to say the right thing. They don't want to say the wrong thing. So we have to be open to listen to each other and understand each other's experiences so that we can move forward.
Sure. So the next question dives into a little bit deeper conversation, and I just want to make sure the whole idea of this is to come from a place of peace and love. But I think it is important for us to talk about oppression and what oppression means, and to think if our children really understand the root causes of oppression. So is there anybody that would like to share?
I would.
Thank you.
I was, in thinking about this conversation this morning, I looked up, as teachers do, the definition of oppression. And oppression, what stood out to me, it says it's the prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control by one party over another. And that has so many pieces in those few words. It's prolonged, poor treatment of, and it also has an element of power to it. And I think that you're right, it's a deeper conversation that has to happen, but I think you have to start on the surface with acknowledgement that it actually exists. And that one group of people and some people are treated like unfairly, but it's more than just fair, like I get half the pie and you get 2 slices. It's like a system that's in place, that's systemic, that causes different outcomes from one group to another group, and several groups at the same time. And in education, the moment that is happening right now in our country really begs us to either face what the issues are or turn a blind eye. And this panel doesn't want to turn a blind eye, but digging deeper, we have to understand that oppression has many outcomes that are undesirable. It has outcomes where some groups of people are suggested, either by race or class, are subjected to cruel treatment or the withholding of necessary things in order to live. or not being able to gain a proper education, not being able to get a job that pays a living wage, not being able to participate in society is much more than just having monuments, taken down or names of foods changed. That's great, it's symbolic, but oppression is systemic, and it really starts with our kids. And because the world that they grow up in, we don't want it to be the same world that our parents grew up in or our grandparents grew up in. And that is, to me, the essence of oppression, because it's prolonged, it's cruel treatment, and it gives you outcomes that are not fair or just, not equitable for every group of people. We love to believe that we put all the kids in the same class and they're all learning the same thing. But if we do not work really hard at making things equitable, the outcomes are not going to be the same for students once they grow up. And what we've learned recently, if they grow up, and what are the circumstances of their lives as we move forward. So I think it's a much deeper conversation, but it starts with acknowledgement, and just that definition alone, having to just sit with cruel and unusual treatment based on a characteristic. And it has to do with power and systemic forces that are greater than any one of us, but we all can do our part to try to eliminate that by acknowledging, learning about it, and trying to move forward. But really, the proof is in the pudding. What are the outcomes we're going to have?
Yeah, and I want to just add on to what Patrina said, and then I'm going to be quiet for the rest of this question. But Patrina, you're so right in what you say, and I just want to give a little historical perspective. So I'm going to read you a quote from Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy. This is from 1860. He objected to a bill funding Black education in Washington, D.C. And he, quote, "This government was not funded, or this government was not founded by Negroes nor for Negroes." This is Jefferson Davis speaking. "But by white men, for white men," Davis lectured his colleague. "The bill was based on the false notion," Davis declared, "of racial equality. The inequality of white and Black races is stamped from the beginning." Hence the title of this book that I'm reading. So in Jefferson Davis's eyes, Black people were biologically inferior to white people. And that is the basis upon which our whole government formed around the way we treated Black people in our history. And I'm going to just point to two things. So I'm going to say that I believe that Black people are still oppressed as a race. That's a statement as a white person that I'm willing to make, and I'm going to offer two pieces. I want you to look at not only all of the actions that led up to how we treated Black people through slavery. Then after that, we have Jim Crow, right? Voters' Rights Act, right? And then we look at segregation. All of these things that happened even after we freed the slaves, we continue to subjugate those people. And so that didn't change. And if we look at the movie, there's a movie out on Netflix called The 13th. And I'd really like everyone to watch that, or encourage you to watch it, because you'll see those systems of racism still exist in our country when you watch that film. And with that, I'll stop.
Can I caveat off of the two previous comments? And I would like to share with you all that last week I had a very important vice president in my office, a white man, and the company that he represents, all of us use his services. And he said to me that I have 75 Black men that work for me, and I have no idea how I'm going to approach them about current events. All right. Now, let me share with you all that throughout the calendar year, we have approximately 13 different observances that are acknowledged at the federal level and should be all the way down to the municipality level. Let's talk about the acknowledgement of Dr. MLK, Black History Month. And this speaks to what Ms. Johnson was saying, that first and foremost, you have to acknowledge that. And I asked that vice president, I said, what did your company do for, let's just start there. I haven't even gotten to the acknowledgement of the Holocaust victims, or Women's History Month, or Latin American Month, which carries over in 2 months. There are 13 observances. Those are not necessarily for the demographic people who are looking to be acknowledged and included into these systems. So the bottom line is, if you merely on that day went out to your barbecue grill, cooked some ribs, had a couple of beers, and you did not acknowledge, at the minimum, a prayer breakfast that you probably could have gone to acknowledge Dr. MLK, all right? Tom Joyner said, for those of you who don't know Tom Joyner is, he's a personality on the radio. He says party with a purpose. I don't mind partying, having a good time, but if I don't have some takeaway value from that, and more so, I wake up being Black every day. I want some of my white friends to come with me to these events so they too can learn about the experience. I never knew anything about the Holocaust victims until I went to the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. There are some people who believe that never even happened, okay? So to the point of systemic imbalance, for lack of better words, all right? We have to get out of the mindset
I think we lost him, froze him. I want to inject this. Don't be discouraged because we're having some technical difficulties. This is a very important conversation and we're all going to still get the gist of it.
So it's so hard to tell when the people here are lost, because I can still hear them. So I am sorry about that. I hope it was just for the very ending of what he said, because it was definitely a powerful perspective. Is there anybody else that would like to share about Irvin? Do you want to go here? Okay. So Irvin's going to just talk through mine. He was having some technical difficulties with his.
So I just wanted to start off by saying, I feel like there's such a connotation around the word oppression. People take that word when you hear it, you think of fascist regimes in Russia and China, and it's often like this giant complex army that you're facing. And it's not that. We're talking about systemic racism, we're talking about lawmaking, we're talking about legislation, we're talking about these systems that have been implemented since long before where I was born or any of us in this room were born. And it's even more difficult to tackle than the army. But we can simply do it by spreading the word, talking to each other. Having this conversation is so important to actually tackling that bigger issue, which is, well, the systemic racism. So.
If I could add one more point.
Yes, please.
I think it's important to know also that oppression is not victimhood. Like, it's not someone claiming to be treated unfairly or playing the victim, because oppression is systemic and it's a whole force that's coming against a group of people for whatever characteristics it chooses. So it's not like when someone says there's a system of oppression, we're victims. There's also a power that has to be garnered in order to be able to fight oppression. In order to survive sometimes, that's fighting oppression. That's not weak. That's not victimhood. That's not being in a place of just cowering or waiting to see what someone's going to hand you. In order to make it in the world, fighting a system of oppression means that you can make it to a place where you can survive and thrive and teach others. It's not powerless. It's a systemic piece that is all forces coming against you. So when we talk about oppression, I want to make sure we're not thinking about victims, the poor whatever group. If it's like the poor Cookie Monster group or the poor purple people, it's not victims. It's the power structure that is causing others to be unfairly treated. It's not the person playing victim and being helpless saying that they can't make it.
True that.
So I'd like to kind of piggyback on what you just said, you know, coming from a, you know, an educator or teacher in the classroom and the power that we have. I think in addition, going along with the discussion of oppression is that passive oppression, is that silence, is that indifference or that unknowing what to do. And of course, you know, I love everyone and of course I treat everyone the same, but really not turning that inward and saying, how am I contributing to this passive oppression that's going on? How am I bringing those implicit biases into, you know, my classroom or into the world, and then, you know, kind of passing that along to the students, you know, not intentionally, but it does happen. And I don't know if that's through just teachers, you know, being so overwhelmed and, you know, meeting a variety of all these needs and differentiating everything and having different emotional needs, and they, you know, just kind of go along with that, or how that is. But I think that that power that silence holds is really a lot of the problem.
Okay, so then next question for the panelists is how are prejudice and biases created, and probably more importantly, how do we overcome them?
I think with prejudice and bias, a lot of times I heard something yesterday that kids are caught and not taught. And when you mentally think about it, you have to think about it like this. Like, we can teach kids a lot of things, but kids are very observant of what you say, what you do, how you act. And their mindset is always looking at something. So when I think about bias and I think about prejudice, I always think about my kids. I always look at them and think the type of discussions that I have to have with them, that I have to help them make situations or things that are okay when they feel like so-and-so is super direct with them. Like, let's say a teacher could be just extra for them, like that it's always them, it's always them, it's always them. And I have to make sure that they don't feel like a teacher is being biased to them and for them. I'm always having to have that conversation with them, because I don't want them to feel like a teacher is always direct with them. I always want to make sure that they have the conversation with themselves and with the teachers to understand every aspect of it. So for me and my kids and the discussions that I have with them, I'm always asking them certain questions. I'm always having conversations with them. I'm always making sure that my kids are open to everything. I don't let them go into a woe is me type of attitude. So I feel like with the conversations that we're having, I feel like we'll always have to make sure that we are inclusive and speaking with our kids, because if you don't, they're gonna catch it. And you thinking that you taught it, but they're gonna catch other stuff. So you always have to be mindful what you say, how you do, how you move with your kids. And I'm always trying to make sure I'm mindful of subliminal things that we say and do that we're not paying attention that a kid is. Because a lot of times we as parents get with adults and we're not mindful that kids are always paying attention. So when you think about your household, when you think about your kids, it's kind of like, I don't think my child is racist. I don't think my kid is mean. I don't think that. And sometimes you have to sit down and have conversations with your kids and ask them certain things, or ask them why they feel like this, or why certain things are a certain way. Because if you don't sit there and have conversations, you're putting it on somebody else for them to catch that information from. So a lot of times we as parents don't think about that. We always have to be actively talking to our kids and asking them questions and putting them in situations to say, if you're in this situation, what would you do and why? We always have to be active with our kids. Always, always, always. And I'm not talking about me as a Black mom. I'm talking about me as a parent, that I'm responsible for the way my kid responds. I'm responsible for the way my kid treats others. So we always have to be mindful. We have to have those, like this right here, uncomfortable situations. We always have to talk about the elephant in the room. We have to be active and stop being passive and stop acting as if it's not in our face. Like, let's, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's not act like that. So I'm always putting it in my kids' face so they can pay attention to their actions and, you know, why, you know, something is a certain way. So that's just the way I feel with the being biased and stuff with my kids. I'm always trying to teach them not to take something to heart or for face value, you know, look at it more deeper to have a better understanding. You know, I'm always asking them to see another person's point of view before you just, you know, randomly throw out your just distaste or discourse for something. So.
I think that touches on, oh.
Go ahead.
So I've had some serious technical issues. So I just came to my phone. So now I'm just swiping to see who's talking and to see, you know, who's on my phone. But either way, I'm going to be in this conversation. So just know that. Talking about our kids, and I think that's such a good point, because I feel like it starts at home, right? It starts with us, and it starts as giving them the tools they need to go out there and feel comfortable to have these conversations, or if they're put in a situation where they are mistreated unfairly, or if they're mistreated, or they see someone else being mistreated, and not just only with their race, but in any aspect, giving them the tools that they need to speak up and talk out. And I remember being in high school. I went to a predominantly white high school in Coral Springs, Florida. I was raised in Broward. And I wish I had known this as a parent. Now I realize it even more, and I'm doing whatever I can with my two to make sure that they know. But growing up, I don't think, and not that my parents didn't know, I mean, I just don't think they felt as inclined to have those conversations with me. So a lot of the things that I learned, or a lot of the situations I was put in as a teenager or as a child, I kind of had to just work through, you know, and try and figure it out along the way. But I remember being in high school, and for Black History Month, and this is, you know, I had this conversation in my African American Studies class in college, and when my professor, he was a Black professor, a friend of mine, we both went to the same high school and had the same class in college. When we told him this story, he was shocked. He was like, "Oh my goodness, what did your parents say?" We said we didn't really think much of it, but it was Black History Month, and to celebrate Black History Month, my high school served us watermelon and fried chicken. And and so those reactions are the reactions that I got as an adult. And thinking back to it, you know, as a high school student, we went in line and got food and didn't think twice. And now as an adult, I'm mortified that I didn't do anything or say anything or speak up, because I'm hoping that they're still not doing that. But as a child, I didn't realize, you know, that was wrong. And I didn't have those adults in my life to let me know that was wrong. And I don't remember if I brought it to my parents' attention. I don't even know if it was a conversation. If it was, maybe I'm sure maybe they would have spoken out, but that's a problem too, because I didn't know to say anything. You know, I feel like if I had known to say something, then they would have advocated for me. So we have to make sure that our students, and I always bring this back to the students, because those are my children. When people say how many kids you have, our numbers went up. So I have 1,400 right now, right? So, and I have 2 that I bring home daily. But when we talk to our children, we talk to our students, we have to have these like meaningful conversations, and we have to have these organic conversations with them to let them know that there's points in their life that they may be faced with some uncomfortable times. They may be, faced with some difficult situations. And if they're a Black child, it is going to be more difficult for you. And here are the tools that you have, and this is what you may need to do in those kind of situations. Because if we don't have those conversations, especially with them now, then it's only going to get harder for them. It's only going to be more of a struggle for them. And that's just one incident out of many that I've had that sticks out to me growing up as a child. And I'm sure the other panelists here, and I'm sure the other people in this, in this group have probably experienced things to different magnitudes being African American.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to share before we move to the next question?
I just want to follow up and say, Taryn, sadly, there are still people that don't understand why it's wrong to do what they did in your high school, like even today. And there may be people on the panel today that don't understand that those are stereotypes, that cast, Black people in a certain light, and it's a wrong stereotype, right? And so people just don't recognize those, and that's why we have to continue to talk and have dialogue.
Mr. Waite, can I just jump in for a second?
Of course.
Okay. My name is Miss Kerrigan. I'm the Dean of Students at Renaissance Charter School. And to kind of piggyback off what Ms. Jackson was saying is I shared with her the other day that I think one of our biggest hurdles is going to be these microaggressions that happen on a regular basis in workplaces and in schools, where white people are not necessarily educated in the little things that they're doing to make our Black colleagues and friends and students feel uncomfortable. So I really think the burden is on white folks like myself to become more educated in this area and start to figure out and talk openly about those things that we're doing.
Or just being open and receptive if somebody tells you that that's offensive, or that they tell you that that's racist. And sometimes they might not know how to put it, but they might just put it that blatant, because it could be something that you said so many times jokingly, and somebody else could hear it and be like, I think that's kind of racist. So I don't think, if somebody ever says that to you, I don't think it's to be in a defense mode. I think it's more of take a step back, put yourself in their shoes, and try to understand what they're actually saying, because a lot of things could be very offensive. The saddest thing, I'm a very joyful person. And I think the saddest thing that I've ever had to ask my kid, and this is what I mean. I asked my children, I have twin boys. I've asked them, I was like, has anybody at school, ever called you the N-word? Because I see so much, and I see so many documentaries, and I want to be ahead of the curve instead of behind on anything. And I always make it an open platform for them to ask and say anything to me or to let me know, and for me to bring it to the attention of the school to be like, hey, this is what's going on. And not to come in a defense mode, but like, I, as a mother, would never tolerate my kid being disrespectful. And I've seen, let me answer, they said no. Let me just say that. Let me just say, they said no. No one has ever said that or anything close to it or anything like that. So let me put that on the table that they did say no. And
Thank you, because we were all sitting here like holding our breath, like, okay, we're gonna ask her after.
I seen y'all faces. I'm like, oh, they want the answer. I'm sorry. They said no. And I think at Renaissance, the vibe I get, I feel like Renaissance is one of those schools that they're never going to tolerate behavior like that. They're just the ambiance there. I'm not saying that everybody's like that. I'm saying that the cohesiveness of Renaissance put me in that perspective, like they're never going to tolerate stuff like that. They're never going to be okay with any type of derogatory names or kids being like that. So I wish some of that could just spill over onto parents and just other aspects of this world to just be encompassing like that. So thank
you. Well, I'll tell you, I really believe that as a school, we can impact our world as a whole, just by switching the perspective of our individual students and the families that we have the opportunity to serve. They're going to spread that message out, and it's going to, catch fire, and it's going to, spread across the country and across our world. I hope that every student in America has the same experience that your boys are having at our school, where they're being treated in a way that's fair and respectful. Irvin, do you want to share?
So I had just wanted to say, as far as correcting stereotypes and things like that, it's very important that we educate ignorance and we correct those ignorances. I feel like that's the stem for all of these problems. It's generational, and you can see it just developing time after time after time because no one's correcting it. So as far as when I'm going to school and you see kids using these words that either nobody should be using or definitely they shouldn't be using just because of the connotation of it, it's sad to see, especially when you try to correct them on those problems. They have a problem with it because they feel entitled to. And there's no level of entitlement that you should have over a word that's so derogatory and so inappropriate, especially for certain settings. As Ms. Kerrigan said about those microaggressions, I feel like we need to also correct those. Every day at work, I feel like I encounter a few of them. I know one of them that gets on my nerves the most is being called boy, not necessarily because the person is racist, but they just don't know my name, so they don't know what to call me. Like, I feel that's very disrespectful, at least to me.
If I could add something too, it's not enough to just not commit offensive things. It's also bad to omit knowledge, information, and history that could make everyone feel empowered. Like if you're not, there are many research articles out now that are saying that many people aren't taught about the contributions of all types of people on the same level. They're not taught about what the indigenous peoples brought. They're not talking about what Latinx people brought. They're not talking about that at the same level. And history will repeat itself if we don't interrupt it. So it's not enough to just not call someone the N-word. We have to all educate ourselves. And the K-12 in education system is the biggest culprit in not bringing an information and actually knowledge. Like you hear about things where there are still social studies textbooks that show slaves as being happy, or they're talking about their indentured servants. There are schools who never, I saw a statistic the other day in 2020, that 40% of schools who responded to this survey, no one ever taught about slavery. They skipped the chapters. They never put it in. And in some of the exams, I'm from New York, so we have Regents exams. It's not covered at all. Neither are the contributions of African Americans, indigenous peoples, Latinx people, Asian Americans. None of that is covered. And when you base the textbooks and what the curriculum looks like, it doesn't show equality. And that's how we can overcome bias and stereotypes, because if you don't teach people explicitly what has happened, they draw their own conclusions. So if you only see white people who are going to be in the forefront, and this is not to make anyone who's white feel, bad if you didn't do a whole year of Black history. You start where you enter. You go where you are. There's ways. Black history is American history. There is a way that you need to infuse it and educate yourself on how to do it. So it's not even just, it starts with teaching kids that we're all humans and we all deserve equal treatment, we all deserve those equal outcomes. And as educators, us making ourselves aware of it, not waiting until February Black History Month, not waiting until it's Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. I'm just still floored by the watermelon and the fried chicken piece. I've seen some horrific things as well. But in 2020, we shouldn't be looking at studies that say we never teach anything, we never read Black authors. We never read authors that are from indigenous peoples. We never do anything that does anything except for the American canon experience. And I think we can start, that's how we overcome that bias. We teach people to not only be empathetic, because we don't want to have one group feel superior and another group feel inferior. We want to make sure we educate ourselves and infuse it into everything that we do.
Yeah, I really agree with that, Patrina. And we are educators, and that really is our place, right? And you're so right. It's about educating ourselves. And I'm learning so much as my wife and I are digging into the racial history of America. I'm just so enlightened and learning so much as I dig in, and it's helping me to gain so much insight and understanding so that I can stand and do the right thing for our Black and Indigenous populations who have been mistreated over the history of our country. And, you know, I go back to, you know, the old Pilgrim story. The Pilgrims massacred the Native American population. They were very predominant in the enslavement of Black people coming to this country. They led that work, but yet they're portrayed in our history books as just this, you know, loving group of people that came to America and mingled with the Native Americans. Nothing could be further than the truth. It is a lie. It is a lie we teach our children. So yes, it does start with education.
So and not being ashamed if you don't know it. You don't enter where you enter. You can start today. It doesn't have to be, I'm now gonna get a doctorate in African American studies. Enter where you enter. When you know better, you do better.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Gill.
You can start. So, yeah.
I personally would want to say I'm totally in agreement with what has already been stated. I also just want to add, however, when it comes to Black men or Black boys, it's necessary that they're educated and informed on their history. The reason why I say that is because when a Black boy does not know his history, then we have a tendency of allowing other people to dictate and to tell us who we are. Give you a prime example. I'm a law-abiding citizen residing here in Lucid County, and to be pulled over by law enforcement, and by no means am I suggesting that all police officers are bad, please, but to be pulled over by a police officer and asked if I have a weapon in my car and who the car belongs to, these type of things, if you're not careful, will cause our Black boys to feel that this behavior is acceptable and it's okay, which will cause, or it leads to some type of retaliation. So for example, my son who attended Renaissance High School, both of my children did, I have actually had to sit him down and teach him how to appropriate himself, being Black in America, and when confronted by a law enforcement officer that does not believe in equality. And so I believe, again, it's necessary for us to teach our children, especially our Black men. Our Black boys are definitely an endangered species, and it's sad to say that in America in 2020.
So as a school, we're committed to doing a few things. So the first is to actively teach exactly what we're talking about, to teach Black history, because it absolutely is part of American history in a big way, makes up you know, a whole lot of our history. In our book room, we have different shelves for different topics. So we have a Holocaust shelf. So the Holocaust by state mandate is something that students should be learning about in each grade level at an age appropriate level. But we also have included social justice books. And we're really trying to make sure that the libraries in our classroom reflect the diversity of our students. Our school is almost a perfect split between students that are white, students that are Black, students that are Hispanic. So we need to make sure that we're providing literature that represents our community and is more than just characters that are white, because implicitly, if that's what we're doing, we're showing that there's that one race is better than the other, and that's just something that we can't do. Deliberate teaching is something we're really committed to doing.
Is it optional, or is it a part of the curriculum?
So it's going to be part of the curriculum. So it's a school-wide initiative that we've actually worked into our strategic plan for next year, is to really make sure that we're being culturally relevant. So we'll absolutely still be teaching all of the standards, but we'll be doing so through text and exposure to ideas that includes ideas. Does anybody else want to share? I'll be honest, I don't even remember what question we're on. It just organically flows, and that's really important.
Can I say to everyone that's participating this morning who is not Black, and I can only speak for myself, but I would go out on a limb to say that we are not looking for appeasement. And I think Ms. Jackson, I got only 4 screens now, but I think she said it best. It's acknowledgement. It's just acknowledgement that we exist, because when our descendants came here, we were brought here as property, as gear. We were not even a human being. I'm a cigar guy, and the peanut gallery that I go into, St. Lucie West, at Smoke Inn from time to time, I asked some of my white colleagues, I said, not long ago, for a person of my ethnicity to even be allowed to vote, there was a jelly bean jar that I had to guess. Not me personally, but people before me had to guess how many jelly beans were in that jar in order for them to vote. That's the type of oppression that has taken place during the Jim Crow years and so forth and so on. We were taught, we were promised. Will it happen in my lifetime? I'm 57 years old. I doubt if it will happen in my lifetime. But we were promised 40 acres and a mule. If you ever heard of Spike Lee, that's the name of his production company, 40 acres and a mule, okay? That never came to us. We remain property. And just a couple of days ago, across the nation, Juneteenth was celebrated. I learned about Juneteenth, not in high school at Miami Norland or Miami Carroll City, where I attended 40 years ago, but I learned about it when I was stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba in 1993, when a sailor came up to me and asked me, what did I know about Juneteenth? I knew nothing about it. And I venture to say a lot of Americans during the course of the past 72 hours, they didn't know about it either, but it happened. So these things need to be talked about. And I commend all of you that are not Black for taking time out of your day to even have the discussion, because this is where it starts, having the discussion. We are not going to always agree on everything, but we could diplomatically agree to disagree and find a happy medium somewhere and learn how to disagree. Absolutely.
Chancellor Howell, can I just add something? I'm very much looking forward to finding these lessons, because I want our Black boys and girls at my school to know where they came from. And I'm not just talking about when they arrived here in America. I'm talking about their African heritage, their Haitian heritage, their Caribbean, their heritage. I want them to know the kings and queens that they came from in Africa. I want them to know that they came from riches and philosophers and teachers. And I want them to know what Africa was like. And so they can feel a connection to a heritage that, because I know where my family, I know where my white roots came from. And I can't imagine going through life not knowing where my roots came from. So that's my commitment.
That's awesome. That's great. That is great to hear. And I'm sure other people on the panel share your sentiment, those of you who are part of the Renaissance staff.
All right. So the next question that I'd like to ask.
Let me comment on Ms. Kerrigan. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a very emotional person too sometimes. Just you making that statement and saying what you were saying, I felt that to heart. Because I feel like I'm by myself when I'm teaching my kids about their roots, when I'm going to bat, to make sure that they are reading certain literature, to make sure that they're seeing Black authors, to make sure that they're seeing where they genuinely come from and what they're made of. So when you're speaking like that, that makes me feel good, because it makes me feel that I'm not driving this bus by myself, that somebody else is making sure that they're accountable for making sure children understand and know where it actually started from, and not just kind of jumping in the middle like slavery and then here you go, you know, like going, no, before slavery, this is what it actually looked like, this is what it actually felt like. So when you're making that statement and stuff like that, like as a parent of 2 Black boys, it is necessary for them to see and hear certain things. So it warms my heart to know that somebody kind of gets it and understands it, that everybody, every child needs to know always that before situation, and not just, you know, I understand that there's always a core curriculum, but I just wanted to say, I do appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
I was researching some books. Like, I collect children's books avidly. So I have an array of children's books, but I wanted to just encourage people, besides the usuals. We always see books on Dr. Martin Luther King. We always see books on various, you know, Rosa Parks and Coretta Scott King. Dig a little deeper. And one of the books that I came across was a new book, a kid's book about racism. If you just go on a kid's book about, it has lots of information about racism. They even have one that's coming out on gentrification. They have one on disparities, and there's a lot of that. Seemed like it's a really good book to start with, just to teach kids about what racism is. But there's also a new book called The Youngest Marcher. It's the story of Audrey Faye Hendricks, and she was the youngest marcher in the civil rights movement who was arrested at 9 years old. So there's lots of resources, but I think I would just encourage people to go a little bit deeper. I went on Books for Social Justice, and there is a whole website called Social Justice Books, and it gives you an array of teaching kids not only how they're like people from history, but also how to be advocates right now themselves. One thing that's remarkable right now in this moment in time is we can't look away. I joke with my friends and I say, you know, the young people are not going to be quieted about this. They are taking a momentum right now in this country that is saying, we may not know all the history and we may not know all the outcomes, but I'll tell you what, we're not going to be overlooked. And this is a moment when we cannot look away, but we also don't want to miss this opportunity to educate ourselves and our children on how to make changes in the future. Education is justice. Knowledge is power. I know we say that all the time from the 60s. Knowledge is power. Education is justice. And teaching ourselves and our children and not missing this moment to really hit them where they're coming from. They don't want to hear about what Dr. Martin Luther King started years ago. I was talking to my nephews and he said, if that was that long ago, why are we still having to march in the streets? I said, touche, let me think about that. Because we have to do our part where we are. And I'm not saying they don't want to learn about it, but I do think that, you know, from my own experience, I learned this at home. These are things that the education I had at home about my history and about things that happened and hearing firsthand accounts of the riots in the 60s and all those things that I learned at home. The school, it'd be great if they could support that. But I think that as we're having this forum today, having more forums that educate and discuss and helping children to channel that anger that they may have right now into something that is useful to push systemic change is like really kind of the way we need to go. There's like a whole list of books that, you know, I could say or put together, but try to just always look for representation in all ways. And on the social justice books, they also have children who are young people who were instrumental in like the revolution in South America and Central America, and who were against Nazism and fascism. They have an array of books that you could use, and that's like a good starting point. There are things that I don't know about it, so I'm always trying to look and see, and now there's a moment where we all can just grasp that. And if we could put aside our feelings of shame or guilt or anger and channel those into educating and moving things forward, I think we won't be irrelevant in this moment.
And just,
go ahead, Mr. Jackson. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. And just to piggyback off that, Mr. Wade, I gotta jump off here in a couple seconds, but you know, there was a couple things I wanted to share just to piggyback off of that. And really what I've been noticing is I've had a lot of white friends who are parents or my age or right around that who have reached out and been like, Lee, I want to say something, but I don't know what to say. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And it's almost like the fear of not saying the perfect words that are wordsmithed correctly to fix racism in a text message almost prevented them from saying anything at all. And I just wanted to take a minute and point out that that's okay. We're all at that point. A lot of us, our hearts are heavy, and there's no Facebook post or one single action that we can do to fix this. And when I say this, I think I refer to kind of what's going on, whether we've seen in the media or these protests. And I think the first step is realizing, I think we're starting to see really the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in America and what's been going on for generations. But when we look back at history, whether it was the suffragette movement or victories in the civil rights movement, you always notice allies, people who aren't directly affected with what's going on, but realizing that something isn't right and lending a hand and helping to amplify the voice of people who are being oppressed. And I do know here on this panel, we have a lot of smart people on this panel who are, I would say, subject matter experts of their background or prejudice or education. But I know a lot of students who may not, parents and students who may not be, and that's okay. But I think the first step is really talking to your students, and you don't have to have the perfect definition or example about what's going on, but having that conversation that, yes, people are treated differently based on characteristics that they can't control. And especially people may not have the same opportunities that you have, and that's not necessarily your fault, but you have an obligation to realize that and help provide more opportunities for other students. And I like earlier we were talking about, you know, just different readings, things, how we can be creative, and I'll just say this and finish up. I really struggled a lot with assigned reading in school. If you forced me to read it, the odds are I didn't want to read it. But depending on, you know, your student, there are some age appropriate things. You know, if you've got someone who's kind of young or maybe even in high school who likes baseball, have them read about Jackie Robinson, the struggles that Jackie went through. Just get on the team. Not only had to be a great player, but a great player who could put up with harassment. If you've got a student, maybe who's in high school, really enjoys English, have them learn about the Harlem Renaissance. They can learn through struggles and creativity and just different things like that. So I guess what I really want to say is there isn't a perfect answer. And I know we've talked about this a couple times, whether through Ms. Johnson or some others, just talking about allies, but the best thing to do is just start. And it's okay to be creative and to think out of the box.
Yeah, please. You're muted.
I want to go back to something that pointed out.
Wait 1 second. I'm trying to unmute you. I think you're on here a couple times. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
All right. Good.
All right. Okay. Ms. Johnson raised a great point. I don't know if you all caught this, but I surely did. And she said her son said, I don't want to hear that. Now that's crucial, because that's really the crux of the matter. And it's very important that they have a perspective. True enough, we have to meet them where they are, and we have to put it in the language that makes sense to them, because during that time, there were no cell phones. Think about if there were no cell phones right now, we probably would be oblivious to what happened to Mr. Floyd a couple of weeks ago. It just happened to be a stranger walking by. So it's imperative on us as adults, and those of us who have AARP cards like me, because I'm 57 years old, and I use mine at IHOP, all right? But that aside, that we did not have the luxuries back then that we have now. That young man who spoke, Mr. Irvin, he probably has never seen a typewriter before. Probably has in a Goodwill store if he's passed by there looking for golf clubs like I do, all right? But the bottom line is that's the world that the millennials grew up in, and you're right. They're not going to settle for it anymore, but it's imperative that we provide them with the perspective that they need, so they understand that from whence they've come. So definitely let's keep that at the forefront. That's just a suggestion. That's some Howellism, all right? But it's just a suggestion for consideration.
All right. So we touched on specific literature. I definitely think I'll be working with Katrina to get a list out to our families on what some great literature for them to consider reading with their students, and we'll definitely work on adding those to our school's collection too, which is already very diverse. But can always encompass more for sure. Is there Anybody else that would like to share, say anything that hasn't been said?
I just want to say thank you for putting this opportunity forward for us to participate and for the community to come together to discuss and talk about ways that we can, really make some significant forward steps in combating, racist ideas and all that's happening around us. So thank you all.
I wanted to say something real quick based on what Lee Jackson said, and that even if you have white friends or Black friends and you don't know how to step in to help them because you either not educated about what's going on, you don't understand what they're going through, it's just step in, and if you don't know, it's fine, just ask them. I feel for you. Now I see what's going on. I understand what's going on, but I don't know much. I don't know how to help you. How do I help you? It's just like when you see a friend going through a problem. You might not have the resources to help them. You don't know where to start. But you step in and ask them, how do I help? Don't feel embarrassed and then you just boast out on them, or even tell them that, or just don't say anything just because you don't know how to. The best thing is just that step in and let them know, I want to help because I see what's going on. You tell me help me understand. Give me a little bit of history of what you're going through, of what's going on. I mean, for being in education, for what's going on right now, for anybody to not hit the internet or even books to educate yourself so you can reach out to those around you. I mean, it's just sad. If you depend on the news to educate yourself only, then we have a problem here. So, and the other thing I want to say, as teachers in the classroom, a lot of times, I think he also touched base on reading. Some students don't like to read. There must be some other ways that we can reach them and educate them. Seize every opportunity. Every time they make a comment, use that opportunity as an educated opportunity to just reach them, give them a little nuggets here and there. And also in the classroom as teachers, we need to really pay attention to what's going on, because a lot of times I hear these comments from kids. They feel like being Black, their punishment or is always harsher than white kids. Why is it this kid did this and nothing happened? All they did was a detention, and I did this, which nowhere near to what they did, and I get a 3-day suspension and this and that. So we really have to be careful as teachers, educators in the school building, how we treat those kids, because they are paying attention and they know what's going on. When one kid does something, even though one may not speak, but somehow somebody's talking, somehow they find out what that kid did and what was it that they were given as a consequence versus what the other person did. So we have to be fair and the way we handle discipline as well, and consequences in schools, because those kids they're paying attention.
Thank you, Ms. Bomey. Ms. Bomey is a 4th grade teacher with us. I really appreciate that perspective. I think it's really important that anytime there's injustice that we see and feel like is happening, that we stand against it. Not to use like a TSA slogan, but if we see something, it's really important that we say something. We all have an obligation for that, and by speaking out against injustices when we see them happen in front of our eyes, it's going to get better little by little. Is there anybody else who would like to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what I do as a parent is I try to use life as a lot of their teachable moments. This is what it is like. If I read a story about, I can remember, I don't want to use the actor's name, I can remember an actor saying that when he was 14, he got molested by his friend's dad. I use that as a teachable moment for my kids when I talk to them and when I ask them questions about, hey, listen, I don't care how old my kids are, I still ask them questions because I want them to know it is an open door with me. Like, let's talk, let's have that open dialogue. If we are watching a movie and there is some type of comment made or racial statement, I'll pause it and we'll have a sidebar conversation to ask them, hey, has this happened to you? Has somebody made you feel this way or whatever? I think we as parents have to make sure we try to use life as a teachable moment so kids can actually be in that moment to understand what's going on, and for us to kind of put it on the table and say, you know, if you're ever like this, you know, make sure you do this. Or I always give my kids, every time my kids tell me something when they were younger, I would say, did you tell your teacher? Because I follow that method. So when I ask the teacher, I'd be like, no, he told me he told you. So now I put it out of their hands to be like, as long as you told your teacher, you're okay. So we just have to always make sure as parents that we're having an open dialogue. And that goes along with teachers also. Sometimes something may happen in the classroom, and sometimes you have to use that as a teachable moment for everybody. We're all going to be uncomfortable about situations that happen. You know, it could be a student get up and scream something derogatory, and we have to use that moment to teach our kids, from parents to teachers. It's all a community.
Thank you. So the Chancellor, do you want to just share about, so Ms. Coburn was saying that part of this conversation, it's really important for us to recognize businesses that are Black owned, and Chancellor Mr. Howell is the president of the Black Chambers of Commerce. So we thought it would be important for him to kind of talk just a little bit about that. Oh, muted. Let me get you.
Wade, you're actually kind of like a DJ now, if you think about it, because you've been talking about
just like it.
Yeah.
And I've got no rhythm.
I'm gonna hold you to it. The first dance that we can have at the school that's not socially distanced, I think we're gonna put you on the ones and twos.
Well, as mentioned earlier, I am the president and founder of the Treasure Coast Black Chamber of Commerce, and I will share with you briefly, I won't take up much of your time telling you how it came about, but a couple of years ago, back in 2016, when I also was a candidate during that time, I went to a coffee with the mayor, and the host, I don't know whether it was conscious to her or what, but I posed a question to the mayor, and she basically said, I have no idea what this guy is talking about. So now, mind you, while I was in this forum, I was the only person of color in there. So I was somewhat taken aback. And what as a Black man, what that made me feel like, if I was someone who didn't know the lay of the land around here and I came through and was considering to move to this area, how would that make me feel? I probably would not have a good impression. That aside, I said, regardless of what and how the constituents vote, that I'm going to start a Black Chamber of Commerce in this area, because there is a need and necessity for one to take place. And that's how that came about in 2016, in October of 2016. Now, that aside, it's important, and we've all heard the saying, God bless the child who has his own. All right, that's an old saying that's been around as long as I've been alive. And that aside is approach that I use called SMEAC. Remember this acronym. If you don't remember my name, anything else, remember this acronym, SMEAC. And this works better than a business plan. Before you even get to the business plan, answer these questions. What's the situation? The M is the mission. The E is how you're going to execute it. The A, there's always administration and logistics involved with it. And C stands for command and signal, but I say permission from Christ. all right? Because it ain't gonna happen until you ask for permission, all right? And what I do is we are advocates. We are advocates in the area, not only for Black-owned businesses, because there are a couple of people who don't look like me who are in business right now who sought our guidance out, and we help them get their doors open. Two specifically, one is a Spa and Tradition, and the other one is Hops Life off of Peacock, a brewery, where 3 firefighters who are white came to me and said, we're having trouble, we're having some challenges with getting our paperwork approved through the city of Port St. Lucie. So guess what I did? I made a phone call and I said, I'm Chancellor Howell, president of the Treasure Coast Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'm calling on behalf of this business. So when you are represented by someone who aligns themselves with the Economic Development Council, the Small Business Development Council, and things of that nature, then doors tend to open up for you. All right. Now, I didn't do it. That was an act of God. Okay. I was just the vehicle that was used to help them. So we encourage entrepreneurs because this generation is very innovative and creative, but we have to be able to teach them the basics, the importance of doing your due diligence, doing your homework. All of us are leaders in our own respect. And what I was taught is that leadership is the sum of those qualities of intellect, human understanding, and moral character that enables a person to lead a group of people successfully. All of us who sit in this forum this morning, we are leaders in our own respect. But that doctor, I'm going to call you Dr. G. All right, I'm not going to butcher your last name up. But I can assure you that Dr. G could be doing a whole lot of other different things outside of taking time to learn about his wife, who he mentioned is Black. I totally understand because my wife is from Panama. She looks like me, but her native tongue is Spanish. So I have a United Nations home as well. My grandson looks nothing like me. He looks like Ashley Warren or Tara. All right, so I get it. So I'm here. My director, Bobby Golden, she's on this call as well. You probably see her name, but not her face. But we're here to help all businesses. We just happen to be the Treasure Coast Black Chamber of Commerce. We're here for all of you.
Thank you. All right, so I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to join us for this important conversation, and for all the people who joined to listen to our conversation and to actively participate. I really appreciate that. Also, a big thank you to Pastor Darren Dale for welcoming us to his church and hosting us here on site so that we could be together for part of this conversation.
And
Yeah,
Jay,
sure.
if I could interject, I would like to ask any of the panelists or anyone that participated in the audience, I would like to provide my information. I'm going to ask Jason to do that, including my cell phone and email, that I am available to partner and collaborate and work with any individual or organization that wants to work on this area. We have to stand together with our Black brothers and sisters and Indigenous people everywhere to make a difference. And it's not just about Black people standing up and doing and fighting what they've been fighting for 100 years, but it's about those allies that we heard talked about standing up and side by side together. We do this work for the sake of humanity. We're all together, we're all equal, and we all have to have that common dignity and respect that we strive for.
I'm Pastor Darren Gill. It's been a pleasure to host this meeting here at our church. And I quickly want to say
He's muted.
She said you maybe. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm so sorry. Listen, I would like to just, again, thank you for coming today. I would like to extend the invitation to each and every one of you. We are also going to be doing more things in the community. I shared with the principal that we're actually launching our preschool academy. We're going to be doing boys' rites of passage, girls' rites of passage. We're actually changing the name of our church in August, and we're excited about some of the things that we're doing. So please check us out. Hopefully we'll be able to post our website information.
Jason.
We are a multicultural church, so we're not a Black church. We're a church that loves people, and we're a church that has a more contemporized approach to ministry. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity to share the panel with you all.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right, so just as an ending to our time together, if everybody could just type in the chat, one takeaway they've had from our conversation together. Before we sign off, if everybody could just type into a chat one takeaway that they have, whether they're a panelist, whether you're just listening, if you could just type into a chat one takeaway.
Roxanne. Please.
A lot of really ways, a sense of community in this climate, that together we can make a difference. That as a school, we're stepping up to be part of the solution, being inclusive, learn how individuals can do better as a teacher in the classroom, but also as a person in our community. Helped in building hope in the belief in equity. Continuing to have the conversation with my children, not have them be afraid, and know that there's still love for people. Everyone comes from a different walk of life, and the conversation is only a bridge to real change. We're in our guidance counselor going into the school year, excited to learn and teach our young minds. That the community is coming together, that it's powerful, gaining wisdom and knowledge from our panel today. So this is just the beginning. This is a single conversation that we're having, but we're trying to look at ways to continue this work and continue these active conversations. So I'm sure we'll be doing more panels just like this as we move into the school year. We really believe that this is not just a one-time conversation. It's something that needs to be ongoing and lead to real change.
So a Black friend of mine said to me, it seems as though we have these conversations only when there's a body in the street. Let that happen this time. Let's keep the conversation going. It can't stop, right? We're a long way from achieving the kind of parity and equity in our community and in our country, in our nation that we deserve for all people. So we can't rest and we can't ever stop this work.
And I think it's important for us when we do decide to do this again, to make sure that we are bringing the way that we're impacting our students, right? So when our kids come back and we do these lessons, we want to be able to share that out with our community so that they can see that it is making a difference to our students and what we've gone through and how we've been able to kind of teach them and educate them on what's going on now and what's gone on in the past. So I really appreciate everyone coming. This is nice. This was really good.
If I can just say something right quick. I think it's fair to say I'm the youngest one on the panel, and having a youth perspective is definitely the most important thing. All change, all social change has come from young people. going all the way back to the civil rights movement, lunch counter sit-ins, voting strikes, you know, people going to march on Washington. It was young people, it was college students, people my age. We need to get out in the community and we need to tackle these issues, take them by the horns. Me personally, leading my youth leadership group and taking on the issues that we have, I'm proud of the work that we've done because we've made these strides. One of the things that we've done was a seminar. It was similar to this, but we had it in person. It was basically just a panel, and we had just different people in different walks of life. They were just talking about their experiences, and we really enlightened a couple of people. And personally, when I went back to talk to some of the people in the audience, they had said that their whole mindset was just changed. And that was the most important thing to me, not necessarily that we need to change their mind, but that we were able to do it.
And Irvin, not everyone here knows Irvin Rogers, but if you don't know Irvin Rogers, you will get to know him in the future, because I can guarantee you Irvin is going to be doing some big things, as he already is, in our community and nationwide. Irvin is actually, his sister and Jada, they were actually in the newspaper recently because they had never missed, from kindergarten to 12th, right? They had never missed a day of school. They have been in attendance every single day for school, and they've never missed a day of school. So I want to give them a virtual round of applause and a virtual hug, because they are committed to their education. Because I can guarantee you, all of us in this chat have played hooky or have said their belly hurts once or twice so that they didn't have to go. So
Brilliant.
Just seeing Irvin and seeing how much growth and seeing how amazing he's doing in our community as a young Black boy, it drives our motivation as educators to continue that for our students that we have now, and to make sure that we instill those same values and principles that Irvin has. So thank you so much, Irvin, because it's commendable that you are even in this group and having this conversation. And I praise you and thank you for just everything that you've been doing. I'm really proud of you.
So,
Thank you.
Irvin, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Earlier you said that some people were calling you boy because they didn't know your name. I just want to say to you that that's wrong, right? That is a microaggression. And if they don't know your name, they need to learn it. Irvin is not a hard name. So
I wear a name tag.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I want to call it out that that's wrong, right? That's a microaggression, and we have to be willing to stand up and say that's a microaggression, and I find it offensive. So, but I'm proud of you, brother. You're saying some great things, and you're gonna be a great leader. And so I
thank you for your support.
Thank you.
All right.
Shout out to the Rexel team. Oh my gosh, phenomenal. Phenomenal. What this team is known for, they don't wait. They already participate. They don't wait.
Oh, we need to get that on a shirt. That's a good shirt.
That is. Thank you, Patrina.
I mean, so honored to have been invited to participate. So honored.
Thank you.
So again, thank you for everybody for participating. This is just the start of a continued conversation and continued action. We'll be posting this on our Facebook page for our families to watch and learn from as well. So it's just the start. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Friday and a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.